Because you know I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass, bass. On Thanksgiving Day, I think it's pretty true. Us dads can't make it like we're supposed to do. The dining room, we have no taste. We put all the wrong forks in all the wrong places. I see the magazines with all the recipes. My daughter, she could make it, but me?
Daddy, please.
So mommy hands me this and says you gotta sop till every inch of it is perfect from the bottom to the top. Whoa, yeah, mama, she told me don't worry about the pie. Don't worry. She said I'd burn them because I screw up everything I try. He cannot cook it, he's gonna she said your stuffing is dry and your casserole's made of wrong. It looks like pudding, disgusting. So get this baster and timer and go ahead and move along. And so I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass, more butter. I'm all about that bass. Oh, I'm bringing butter back. Don't try to wear those skinny britches now, 'cause I'm gonna pour this all over there. And I'm here to tell you every inch of it is perfect from the bottom to the top. Yeah.
That's our last shot.
That's our last shot. Yeah.
Good morning. We are so happy to have you guys here. We have an amazing morning planned for you. The Souters are going to be sharing. They shared last year, so we're really excited to hear from them again. I'm going to go ahead and open us in prayer. Lord, we just thank you for all the women that are here this morning. Thank you for just getting us here, getting us out the door, getting the kids out the door. We just pray over this morning. We pray over our marriages, Lord, that our ears would be open to hear the things that we need to hear, and our hearts would be soft to listen. And we just thank you and praise you, Lord. Amen.
All right. Well, we are a few months into our Mom to Mom season now, and we just really hope that you guys are making new friends, building relationships around your table, and maybe even hanging out throughout the month. So if you are new, if this is your first month here with us, welcome. We're really glad that you're here. Just want to let you know that each table has a table leader and a mentor mom. So the table leader at your table is going to help just facilitate the discussion, connect people, make sure everyone is just feeling welcome and connected. And the mentor mom is at least one phase of life ahead of you. Maybe she has older kids, her kids could be grown, but she is just here to give you her wisdom, and they're both here just to build relationship with you and to help just foster community around your table. So last month, we asked you guys to help volunteer on our various teams, and we got a great response, and just wanted to thank you guys for that. It's really fun to join a volunteer team and just hang out with other moms in the morning. We're here early, we're hanging out, having fun. So it was really fun just to get to meet some of you doing that this month. And so if you are new, or maybe you're not new, and you want to volunteer on one of our volunteer teams, there is a spot on your table roster. You can just mark that you want to join a team and come early and hang out with us, or stay late and hang out with us. Let's see. Oh, we have the sharing table just right out these doors to the right. So make sure you check that out during the break. See if you find any new treasures. Also, when you walked in, if you were here by 9:30, you got a raffle ticket, and we are going to be raffling off coffee and a few fun prizes at the end of the morning. So I think that's it for my announcements. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Brittany. We are going to just dive into our theme for the year of Cultivating Joy, and Brittany is going to just talk to us about what that's looked like cultivating joy in her marriage.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies. So yeah, I was just going to share just a brief moment about how the Lord has been cultivating joy in our marriage in this season that we're living in right now. So Paul and I have always loved being in community with other married couples. We just love learning and growing alongside people that are in the same season of life as us, but also people that have gone through what we've gone through, and have insight onto how we can tackle, the day-to-day things that come up in our marriage. And so just from early on, we knew that just from our own backgrounds of being raised with, divorced, kind of dysfunctional families, we knew that we were not immune to divorce ourselves. And so we, from early, before we got engaged, we knew that we needed to be intentional with our marriage. And so we got plugged into like a small group, like a growth group that had all young married couples in it. And we met weekly for 8 years on Thursday nights. And we had dinner together and we got to see our children grow up together. And that was just such a great weekly reminder that we were dedicated to this marriage till the end. And so just being able to have that weekly reminder just was so important, because after just 8 years, our friends, some of them in the group started moving out of state, and we kind of just started dwindling our group. And although we're still super, super close, it's just not the same as meeting weekly and keeping each other accountable. So many years, like 4 years pass. And then we just felt like the enemy was starting to creep into our marriage and kind of pulling us apart and keeping us busy and not connecting. And so last year when Tom and Racky were actually speaking, at the end, they invited us to a marriage group called Love Like You Mean It, a marriage study. And I was so excited. I was like, this is what we've been wanting. And so I went home and told Paul, and we were all in. So we committed to meeting with them. And so we met with Tom and Racky and a couple of other couples. And it was just so great. Like, we were so thirsty for community with other married couples. And we're just personally, Paul and I are so thankful for Tom and Racky and the support that they had given us over the last year, and just invested into our marriage. So after our Love Like You Mean It group that we were in, we were like, okay, what are we going to do now? Like, it's over. Like, we need to continue. So we didn't let 4 years pass, but a couple months did pass, and we got hooked up with marriage mentoring. And so again, like, we were able to be intentional about our marriage, and we were reminded, and although we knew this from when we did our marriage mentoring when we were engaged, is that we are a team. Like, my husband and I, like, it is us, and it's not me versus him. It's like us versus the enemy. And so that was just such a great reminder that, like, we are on the same team and we are not fighting against each other. There's something else that's trying to divide us. So through the last, several months, we kind of went over our love languages, which we've done many times, and they've changed throughout the years. But right now in the season for us, just with like growing businesses and children and all of that life has to pull us, away, quality time is the thing that both of us are wanting. And it's fun because we both have the same love language right now, which makes it a little easier because I'm wanting that and he's wanting that. And so we both get filled up in order to do this together. So while he is, chugging away, building businesses, and I'm changing diapers and cleaning up the mess and packing lunches, at the end of the day, when we are ready to go to bed and we haven't really talked much, we just feel super disconnected. Like, what? Like, he's just a roommate and we're just doing this separately. But when we can come together after the kids go to sleep, even if it's just for 20 minutes, like 20 minutes can go a long ways in a marriage when you're being intentional. And so for us, just being able to talk about what was exciting about today, or, just the things that we kind of like want to ask our kids, like, we wouldn't say like, what inspired you today, unless they're maybe a little bit older, but what inspired you today? Or what did you learn tonight at men's Bible study? Or, getting to go back and say like, oh, mom to mom was so great today, So that for us has really been so enjoyable. And the Lord has really just worked through that 20 minutes that we get to spend with each other every night. So with that, I wanted to introduce Tom and Racky Souter, who are going to be coming up here. So Tom and Racky have been married for 41 years and are from the Midwest. They met each other at university as both were studying to be teachers. After college, they moved to Oregon and taught elementary school for decades. They have now retired and lead the marriage ministry, the marriage mentoring ministry here at Good Shepherd. They have 3 grown daughters and 3 grandsons. Their favorite activities are traveling together, walking, golfing, watching their grandsons' sporting events, and having monthly dinners as a family. So if you can all help me welcome Tom and Racky and all they have to share with us this morning.
Thank you, thank you. I almost feel like we don't need to say anything because she's covered a lot of our points. So anyway, this is just so fun for us to be back here. This group, I've told so many people, it's such a blessing that you have the leadership and this ministry for you young moms, and that the church provides this. That it's a really, what's the word? Not beneficial, but very important, crucial. Yeah, it's going to take both of us. That it's really great that the church provides this for you. It's just so important, so important. So kudos for being here. We know it's really hard to get out and about with you and your little ones. We wish we could have learned a lot of these truths and spent this time putting in our marriage when we were younger, because things could have gone a lot smoother than they have. Marriage, and especially the secular attack on marriage these days, is really close to our hearts. So we want to do whatever we can. This is not our sweet spot, being in front of a group, but we're going to do it because it's important. We really believe in marriage, and we want to do what we can. As an introduction, when I read about joy in the Bible is a book of joy. It's mentioned there's 500 references to joy, rejoicing, delighting in, and there's only 158 references to sadness, tears, mourning. So it's just exciting to know that what we set our lives on, the truth of God's Word, is a book of joy. So,
nice job.
Thank you.
I feel a little pressure, besides being nervous, being the only... Is Jim here? Because it's not so much you. You all are very, very nice. But I feel I have the weight of all your husbands out there saying, you tell them, Tom. Okay, so anyways, there's us in that picture. This was 40 years ago. We're at Crater Lake. So happy.
With now gray hair.
Yeah.
Lots of hair and brown hair.
Well, that's the before picture.
Yeah.
Racky's actually expecting our first daughter. And
in this picture.
Yeah. Can you mute her mic? Okay. And this is a more updated version. This is from a wonderful trip we took this last September. Mm-hmm. And I think this is an important picture, not because of where we're at geographically, but where we're at in our marriage. Because if I were to ask all of you, would you like to have marriage last a lifetime? And would you like to end up with a life partner that you just love being with? That's the goal. That's the goal. And so the goal is at the top. Helping marriages not just survive, but to thrive. And that is the mission. And as we've done some research, there's actually research as to what this looks like. And there's 3 real components that you want to end with. A marriage that thrives has 3 things that are important. One is there's intimacy. And the intimacy talks about you and your spouse being best friends. You want to end up being best friends. And I'm glad to say, while there's been moments when we wanted to kill each other, we have ended up best friends. And we really like hanging out together. And it's a wonderful thing. And it was worth being intentional about.
Killing each other is a bit strong, but...
It's husband talk, honey. All right, boys, I got it. Okay. Second issue is passion. And that's about just the physical connection. You become soulmates. That, we've been married 42 years. And we've had the privilege of getting to know each other on really soulmate levels, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a joyful thing. The third area is commitment. It's like, of all the women, as nice as you are out there, I've chosen this one. And she's chosen me. And that commitment really makes you weather every storm you face, that you're in it together. So those three things are wonderful parts that the Lord says, always be full of joy. And I think that's what helps you do that.
And those words on the bottom there, cultivate. I know we listened to the September talk and Jen's talk last month, and the words cultivate and intentional were brought up a lot. And prepare, tend, maintaining, caring, growing, improving. It just reminds me of a garden, and a garden, fruit, vegetable, for flowers. It just means life. And so we want to be life-giving. We want our marriages, husbands and wives, to be life-giving to each other. And being intentional about the little things. Just in our reading, shared laughter and having fun together, that's really one of the most important parts of marriage. If we aren't intentional, we start drifting apart. Nobody intends to drift apart. It just kind of sneaks in after the time of, what were they called, joy?
Steelers or something.
No, remember the joy gap, the joy gaps between your times of having fun together and playing together. So what comes naturally early on when you were first married really needs to be worked on intentionally later on in your marriage. So when I first heard about your theme for the year, joy, way back in college when I was teaching preschool, we taught this song to the little preschoolers. I wish I could sing, but I can't. But it's to the tune of Jingle Bells. So just imagine it goes, J-O-Y, J-O-Y. This is what it means, kind of just like Jingle Bells. But I love it. It's Jesus first, yourself last, and others in between. And it's a very simple line, but the theology is very basic and very true. So teach it to your children. Take it home today, and it's one of those things. We're going to kind of walk through the J and the O and the Y so you see what we mean. But anyway.
I found that joy in marriage is really deeply rooted in relationships. And you have, of course, your relationship with yourself, and as you're working to grow as a person, to be the best version of yourself. The O in our context is going to be your spouse and how you can serve one another. And we'll talk quite a bit about serving and how that's an aspect of this. And of course, finding Christ's presence in your marriage is really awesome. The triangle speaks to that, and we kind of like the triangle because as we both seek to grow and be our best versions of ourselves, we grow together, and as we get closer to God, if we're doing it right, it really brings us closer to one another.
By the way, a lot of these pictures are on your slides, are on your handouts, but there's some that we have just for our talking, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along in the handout too. The cord of three, this verse in Ecclesiastes is one of our favorites. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better. For us, that's the Lord in there. For a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And I don't have a tattoo yet, but really one of these days, if I ever get one, this is what I picture doing. Just a little cord of three with a J in the middle for Jesus and a T and an R on each end. Because this has just been a visual for me of our marriage. That we are both so tightly wrapped around the Lord. When that happens, nothing can break you apart.
Tattoo, huh? Okay.
Well, I always say if he'll do it with me, I'll do it. But
I'm
if
not
we
a
get the same
tattoo
one,
guy.
but I don't think it'll happen. But anyway.
But I just heard from the men, and some of them are. So you might want to consider this one. Okay. One of the challenges, and speaking on this topic, is everybody's got a unique story here. There's, I don't know how many of you, but as many as that are here, each story is very unique. And we're not sure what your cords are like right now. They could be different. Some of you may have a cord of two. Maybe you haven't really found that place in your walk with Christ yet, that's still something you're working on and discovering. Some of you might be single moms and kind of figuring out that, or maybe on your second marriage, figuring that out. So there's a lot of different stories. Would you please take our thoughts today and kind of craft them to your own situation well? And maybe that's something your table group can address as well. Some of you may have a cord right now that's pretty frayed and about ready to break. And it's really hard. And I would say to you that your story is really, really important to you, and it's really, really important to God right now. And he hears you and sees you. And the story for you may involve more serious help than what we're offering today. We're kind of talking more about normal marriages that are pretty healthy, just facing the normal bumps. But if you're in more crisis mode, please reach out and get the help that you need to navigate the difficult waters. Anyways, back to joy. The first...
J.
That's joy. Yeah,
Jesus.
That's it. We got this in the research we were looking for this. Spiritual significance. There are 4 elements, and we picked this up from 2 people we like to learn from, Les and Leslie Parrott. They're 2 doctors out of Seattle Pacific, and they do a lot of work in marriage. And they had 4 things you can do to develop more spiritual significance. So I'll talk about these 4 things. I'll talk a little bit about what it looks like in our lives, and you can think about how it's going to fit your situation. One is establish a daily reflective practice. Find a place to fill your own well. And for us, it's traditionally been, we're quiet time people. I do mine in the morning. I'm a morning guy. I wake up. That's kind of my time to have some time in the Word and pray and kind of develop that side of my life. Racky's a late night person. She does hers late at night. So you need to find a place where you can be fed yourself and grow in your own faith. And so think about what that's going to look like. What's your recipe? The second thing is learn to communicate about spiritual things and bring what you're learning and your thoughts to the things that are important to you as a couple. And if you think of that cord of 3, that's a great way to think about it, because there's lots of things you got to talk about, like how you're going to parent, how you're going to discipline the kid, what are we going to do about our finances, what are we going to go on vacation, and there's lots of things. And we've always tried to communicate with that cord of 3 in mind. And I would say, as you're just making decisions, I don't know where you are spiritually, but if you could be thinking about adding prayer to those decision-making moments. Third is find a place to go to church. Be part of a church family. And as was mentioned earlier, find a place for a small group. There's nothing beats rubbing shoulders to shoulders with other people in your same stage of life, growing together, and doing life. And the last one is to learn how Jesus loved. And that's how you kind of live it out. And I would contextualize it. Take the things that are part of your world, your kids, your spouse, your neighbors, your work, and how do you bring Christ to those situations and show love to the people around you?
Good. Then another thing we did that was really fun is 2 of our favorite organizations still for family things are Focus on the Family and Family Life. So we just wanted to listen to some podcasts that they had, and they had one exactly called Cultivating Joy in Your Marriage. And it was, I think, from last year, 2021. And the 2 people that wrote this book, The 4 Habits of Joyful Marriages, were the speakers, a doctor and a pastor. And these were the 4 things that they said were great habits of a joyful marriage. And I love the first one, is just play together. Have fun together. People like to be where there's laughter. Think of how your kids gravitate when you and your husband are laughing together. Because there's joy in little things, celebrating little things together. For us, we always like to make sure that we are having eye contact, looking into each other's eyes, physical touch. Sorry, I can't touch you. We're too far apart here. Physical touch, just a hand on the leg, whenever, and smiling. So just have fun together.
2, listen for emotion. And this kind of takes that daily time. Find a place to connect and that fits your situation right now. And it's learning to listen and sharing how your day's going, what's impacting you, and tying not just into the information, but to the emotion behind it. Really important. Third one is appreciate your spouse. We get busy flying instructions, giving commands, maybe some criticisms, that we forget the simple role of the value of appreciation. And just from my own experience, it was kind of nice preparing for this, because I think Racky realized, I better be appreciating Tom more. And
no, that's not true. I mean, I tried to more.
Well,
it is true, but I mean,
could you mute her mic again?
Not just for this. Go ahead.
All right, the guys are saying this is a good one, okay? Because guys are like puppies, we just give us a little scratch and snacks, and we're like, we're just good to go. But anyways, lately, Racky is, I don't know whether intentional or not, but my days have kind of been full of, thanks, Tom, for doing that. Or I really appreciate this. And at first, I just was like, And pretty soon, I realized, I really like that. And not only that, I really like her. So anyways, it's a gift. It's a nice little gift. Appreciate.
And the last one, we all know God created the Sabbath as a day of rest, and we need it. Our lives are so busy. We need a time to relax together as a family, as husband and wife, because our schedules get so out of control and so busy. Mm-hmm. So that's a great one. Just some time. How are you doing today? It used to be, we still like to say weekly, go on a date, but that's so hard, I know, especially with your time of life. So even if, every few weeks or every month, if you can just have a nice getaway, it can be to a coffee shop, go for a walk, just a time where you can really communicate together. Anyway, so we did not read this book, but we listened to both podcasts, and they were very life-giving. Mm-hmm. So they talk a lot about brain, which I'll talk about a little bit later. One of the other things we found is a new website, and on this page on your handout on the top of the second page where it has loveology.org, this is where you're going to do the first 2 minutes of journaling after we watch this little clip. Les and Leslie Parrott have this amazing new it's a free resource, and there's lots of experts on marriage and relationships and family, and lots of topics. So you can just go there, find a topic, and they're usually 3-4 minutes long where they talk to them. So we're going to play one for you that we thought would really kind of fit your time of just being so busy, where you start kind of living parallel lives as roommates, and you want to connect again as soulmates.
This website has hundreds of different relevant questions on it. I'm amazed. And they're kind of categorized for you. And what I like about them, they're research-based. They usually bring in real experts on the topic, and they're short. So here you go.
House, what can we do?
So we actually studied this, believe it or not, because it turns out that one of the secrets of the happiest couples in one of our research projects was that they primarily treated each other.
Uh-oh. Oh, no, sorry.
So, Shanti, one of the questions that we hear
time
and again from
you had to hear that twice.
How can you just be better friends, right? It's easy to kind of get into that, kind of a roommate rather than a soulmate friendship kind of zone with your spouse. What can we do?
So we actually studied this, believe it or not, because it turns out that one of the secrets of the happiest couples in one of our research projects was that they primarily treated each other, first and foremost, like best friends. And so how do you do that? And so actually we went years back to a study that was done quite a number of years ago on what's the primary predictor of friendship? Like, what does that look like? And when you ask somebody, what do you think the primary predictor of friendship is, you're thinking usually things like, well, we need to have temperaments that really kind of get along really well, or that we have the shared values or whatever. And all of that is good. But it turns out the primary predictor of real friendship is actually, first and foremost, geographic proximity. Believe it or not. You're the best friends with the people that you spend time with and you see the most often. And one of the reasons that we found with married couples is it works exactly the same way And one of the reasons that they're kind of feeling pulled further and further apart is that they're just not spending time hanging out together. And we always think like, oh, I need to have a date night, and I'm not having a date night. And there's nothing wrong with a date night. That's great. But truly just hanging out and talking like you used to, even having coffee together and reading the news, like that's what Jeff and I do. And sort of going, ooh, listen to this. Those kinds of things, believe it or not, really have an impact.
And they're kind of incidental, aren't they? Because it's not like we go, hey, let's do this so we're better friends right now, right?
Yeah.
And I love that idea of proximity because, as you're well aware, there's a famous research study that shows that friendships in college settings, those students that have their residence, their dorm room next to the trash bin, or next to the restroom, or next to the staircase, they will have more friends than other people on the floor just because of the proximity of that. So it makes natural sense that we got to focus on that in a marriage relationship too.
Well, what we don't realize is how often we have actually let ourselves let that slip. And it's usually just because we're busy. We've got kids, we're running around, we're working, we're doing all these things. I literally had, as part of our study group, we had 1,000 couples in our study group for this project. And as one sort of piece of it, I looked at the people that had gone from the most distressed marriages to the happiest marriages. What did they change? And surprisingly, this was one of the things. There was a young mom who said she and her husband were almost on the verge of divorce. They had 3 little kids. They just were constantly arguing. And she looked at how much time they spent together each week just to kind of, hang out as friends. And it was like 15 minutes a week or something. And she's like, no wonder we're at each other's throats. We don't even like each other. Like, we're not buddies anymore. And she changed one thing at the beginning because it was the only thing she could change in that sort of short a period of time. And she said, okay, on Tuesday nights, Tuesday late afternoons, my husband takes our 6-year-old to t-ball practice. And she said, there is no reason in the world why I have to load up the baby and the toddler and jump in the car with him to t-ball practice. But that is 20 minutes in the car on the way there, and that's 20 minutes back twice a week. And she said, literally at the beginning, that is all they did to change until they could make some more bigger structural changes. And she said, once you start just talking again and sharing life, you start liking each other again. And once you're friends and you like each other again, you can work on anything.
That's so helpful. Yeah, well, you want to be best friends, you got to put in the time. And it's such a good reminder. Thanks so much.
So that's just a little clip of the hundreds of ideas that they have. There's lots of topics. One of them that was my favorite one was finding spiritual significance together. That was another good one that we wanted to show, but we thought this one might be a little bit more for your age group. So you're going to have 2 minutes now, a minute or two, and we just want you to, next to that space, just 2 things you're going to talk about later. Write one idea of how you and your family, your spouse, play together, have fun together, because you might want to, we'll share those later, and somebody might get some great ideas. One way that you and your spouse or family play together, have fun. And the other idea, or the other thing we'd like you to write is one appreciation of your spouse right now. So just one way you can have fun together, and one appreciation you can later share with your spouse.
Should we just say this is private journaling?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just your journal time. You're going to share
kind of private
this.
journal.
You're going to share this later with your table groups. All right. We're going to keep going here.
All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the elephant in the room. Racky and I have a lot of talents. Being on time isn't one of them, nor is necessarily talking things out. That's not a natural for us. It's a value, but it's not always natural.
We've had to learn it, work at it.
And you're probably the same way. And I would say sometimes there's an elephant in the room when you're kind of at each other, you're crabby, and the elephant's standing there, and the elephant's name is not joy. It feels more like disappointment, anger, mystery, and it's made pretty much both of you quite uncomfortable. So one of the things that we found is that you've got to find a way to talk to each other about this elephant, and how do you do it? And when anxiety is high and you're feeling stress, the natural inclination during anxiety time is two things, fight or flight. And so often you can have your conversation jump to fight mode, where you're at each other. The other is flight, where you shut down and you ignore each other. Neither is very helpful. So what we did is we've kind of learned that there's some strategies that we found helpful. Maybe you would find the same. One is we set a time and a place to talk, because often it's not in the moment. But I'll say, Racky, I'm just feeling some tension. Can we talk sometime today? I just really want to clear the air. And she'll usually look at me and maybe roll her eyes and say, oh boy, this sounds like fun. But we find a time, and she'll say, okay, maybe after 4 o'clock, after this or that. So we say, okay, let's do it. Second thing is, I don't know where you're at spiritually, because this could vary, but I really like starting the time with prayer. You're a court of 3. And nothing helps a sticky conversation better than thinking Christ is there with you. Because it's calming, and it makes more sense, and you're more considerate, hopefully, of each other. If you're the lone Christ follower in your family, then just pray to yourself, quietly. And it doesn't have to be long. It's just sort of, God help us with this talk. Third point is you're going to have to learn how you talk to each other well. And there's could be a lot said on this, but for today, it's just you want to use your best talking and listening skills. Because I like the quote that's up on screen. Your goal is this. The important skill is you want to learn, so you can learn, is how to talk so your mate will listen. So how do you do that? And how to listen so your mate will talk. Because if good conversation ends with both of you feeling understood, you're not necessarily agreed with, but you leave feeling understood, and that's great. And then the last thing is, if you find your conversation is getting back to that fight or flight mode, you might need to pause and say, this is really important. I can tell we're kind of getting worked up. I don't think I can continue right now. Can we come back and set another time? Hopefully the same day, but just have a little cooling off. So you hang in there together and have really important conversations, and the elephant goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So now we're getting to the O, the others. Jesus first and yourself last, and others in between is how the song goes. So we're thinking of others as your spouse. And we're going to watch a little clip in a little while. So I'm just going to talk through these biblical calculations. It could be equations, but this is from Love Like You Mean It, the class we're teaching right now on Sunday mornings. Your needs are greater than my needs. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. This whole chapter in Philippians, this chapter on others, keeping others' interests above your own is so important, as is the chapter 4 of the joy chapter. But then us is greater than me. Togetherness reflects the character of God, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. So in marriage, our oneness is much, much more important than our individual satisfaction. And then God is greater than us. God's priorities and desires for our marriage outweighs our priorities and desires. Does our marriage bring God joy? What are his desires for our marriage? He probably has such a bigger plan that we can't even imagine yet.
Can I add something? Are you done?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to clarify a little bit about your needs are greater than my needs. Or I think how the song goes, and yourself last.
Yeah.
I think that has to be quantified a little bit, because what we're really getting at is selfishness in marriage is a shipwreck, ready to be happy if there's excessive selfishness. Where this works best is when both of you are on board to the serving thing. It's kind of like the 5 love languages. I try to serve her, she tries to serve me, and we kind of fill each other up well. It's a great theory, and I think we all like it, but I will say it's harder work than you realize, because it goes back to taking the time together for me to really understand what her emotions are right now and how is she feeling and what the service look like. And it might mean she really wants help around the house and she wants me to sit with her and get that honey-do list going, and that's how I could serve her. And as she hears my story, she might find I'm really stressed at work. Things have not gone well, something went bad, and I'm feeling really down, and so she knows my needs. And so part of the process is really getting to spend time to know each other's needs and then try to serve and not be selfish.
Kind of a cute way that the author Tim Keller puts this is, the truly gospel humble person is not a self-hating person. It doesn't mean hating yourself. Or a self-loving person. The truly gospel humbled person is a self-forgetful person. So your ego is just like your toes. Your toes are just there, they just work, but they don't draw attention to themselves. And so that's kind of what it means to be self-forgetful. This just was interesting. There's so much research on joy, you guys, and laughter and fun. And this just says, well, we can read it here. The level of a couple's joy is determined by each partner's ability to adjust to things beyond his or her control. Every happy couple has learned to find the right attitude in spite of the conditions they find themselves in. And it's just the way you think, the way a Christian thinks, your attitude. We have to cultivate the right kind of mind, and that will determine our joy or lack of it. And one of the things that brings joy is fellowship among believers. And here we all are. This is one of them. This is a joy-filled room, just celebrating the fellowship we have in Christ. But it is such an important, our attitudes are such an important reminder to women. It's kind of like that sign, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. That's such a great line. And I used to think that was it, but when I was trying to read about this, it continues on, which I love. It says, the second line says, if grandma ain't happy, run. So I just know, I remember these years. I was selfish when I was so busy as a young mom of 3 kids. And I let anger actually come into my attitude and my mind. And there were a lot of anger-filled years. So it's just getting out of the selfishness, checking your attitude.
Okay, I'm going to tell a little story time with Tom. Because having a good attitude is a reality. If you want to have your marriage thrive, you're going to have to work on this. And it's not one of those buttons you push. You say, oh, great, thank you for that tip. Bingo, I got a happy attitude now. And I think that really boils down to why you need to spend time with God and do it as a team. But here's the story. Your husband wants to go camping. He loves camping. He's an outdoors guy. The kids excited to go fishing and swimming. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm really a condo girl. Give me the beach in Hawaii. Camping's not my thing, but you've read in this book that you should love what your children love. You should love what your husband loves. So you're going to do it. You're going to go camping. And away you go, and it's raining. And it's cold. And the tent's leaking. And the kids are fussing.
This has happened to us so many times. But I love camping too.
Yes.
It's not just your thing.
Yes.
I love camping too.
Yeah, and your attitude's always been lovely.
I know.
Quite frankly, we threw the tent in the garbage and bought an RV. But that's not part of that's not part of the story because
Just go.
So, you're finding your happy attitude really difficult. In fact, you're getting downright cranky. And so you have 2 choices. You could add to the rain by being miserable and making your family miserable and, pouring on the guilt and maybe accusing your husband of, this and that. And it gets awful in the tent. And then next door, this RV comes in. It has to be sunny on their side. And they have indoor plumbing. And they don't have to get up in the middle of the night. But you remember attitude. So you switch and you realize you're going to make the most of it. This is where you are. This is all you can afford. And you're going to realize there's something bigger going on here. And so you begin to work on bringing joy to the family and maybe telling interesting stories under the tent. And even in the middle of the night when you wake up this husband who can sleep through everything because you got to go to the bathroom and there's bears out there, you get him up and he stumbles out of bed and you're walking to the restroom. Sure, there's a bear out there. And you realize, through all this, isn't it nice to have a partner and that I'm not alone? So attitude helps you realize there is something bigger going on, and it changes those rainy day things into something that is meaningful. And this guy is just so glad that you're there with him. He's even thinking that maybe next year they'll go to Hawaii.
Yeah. Good. Intentionality. One of the research things we found that when you actually are intentional about being happy together, your brain is, things are changing in your brain that you might not even expect. If you make just having those little moments of joy and happiness and fun with your spouse, if you do that for 15 minutes a day, day after day after day, it will literally change the chemistry in your brain. Your attachment in that relationship can move out of the fear mode and into the joy mode. And I really like that because it's just the little things, the intentional, tone of voice, eye contact, physical touch that can make a difference. So
I like this verse. I trust in him with all my heart, and he helps me. And I think sometimes joy feels like help. And I would say good marriages that thrive seek out help. And they attend either classes or do stuff like you're doing today, be mentored. They find ways to get the help they need to fit that stage of their life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And one example we'll show you. We'll give you a little tidbit from one of the classes we teach.
This is after this video. On this section of your little handout, you're going to have your second journaling minute. And you're just going to think about those 3 biblical calculations. He's going to talk about them again. But just how that could, what are some of your reflections? How could that change your attitude a bit? Mm-hmm. So,
the topic is on love is humble. This particular study goes through 1 Corinthians 13 together.
But he just says it so succinctly.
And the Bible says that these things are antithetical to love. A proud, arrogant, boasting person is not a loving person. They may be in love with themselves, but they're not loving to other people. An arrogant person says, I think I'm better than you. I think my needs are more important than your needs. A boastful person says, I think I'm better than you are. And when we are that kind of person and we all drift in that direction, that chases love right out of the room. Now, we may never come right out and say that in a marriage relationship. We may never say, I think I'm more important than you. But subtly, we communicate, my needs are more important than your needs. What I want is a bigger deal than what you want. We need to be doing things my way. My priorities are more important than your priorities. And again, we don't come right out and say those things, but just ask your spouse if he or she feels like you think you're more important and that your priorities are more important. Again, this is natural. This is a part of our fallen condition. As people who have rebelled against God, our focus is self. It's inward. And these things are antithetical to love. 1 Corinthians 13 says, love is not arrogant and does not boast. For love to thrive in a marriage, we have to recalculate, recalibrate our sense of our own importance. We have to start thinking biblically about our identity rather than thinking from a self-focused perspective. There are some equations, some marital equations we have to factor in that will help us recalculate our own worth and the worth of our spouse. Here's the first one. We have to begin with an equation that says your needs are more important than my needs. Now, that's a biblical calculation. Philippians chapter 2 says we are to do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility we're to regard one another, catch this, as more important than ourselves. I'm convinced that one verse from the Bible, Philippians 2:3, that verse could change most marriages. It could fix 85% of the conflict that's going on in marriage. If couples had a radical vision of their marriage saying, your needs are more important than mine. I want to care for your needs. I'm going to value your needs ahead of my own. Marriages would be revolutionized with that one principle. It's putting another person ahead of ourselves. Interesting story about Philippians chapter 2.
So, I just love the way he explains that. But it's hard. It's so hard, especially when selfishness is our natural default. So we're going to just take a minute now, and on that little section, just journal for a minute. What are your reflections on this calculation or one of those that are listed just above there, the three that are 2 slides before that? Anything stick out to you there?
Should I go back to that other slide, or is this? I think we're okay.
Any reflection that you might have? Any thoughts? Okay, then we're going to get into the why, yourself. Again, when I thought of that little Jingle Bells song from college, when I was your age, this was actually one of my favorite Bible studies also. It's this Dr. Warren Wiersbe. He has, I don't know how many B books, like Be Rich is Ephesians, Be Complete Colossians, and the one I loved was Be Joyful in Philippians. So I got the book again and went through it, and it's just amazing how Paul, as a prisoner, could write what he did in Philippians, that this was his personal manifesto on how to live a life of joy. And the key here is in the Lord. So we just have to find that we have to go back to that very beginning of placing our hope and confidence when we made the decision to follow Christ and his character, getting that, the vertical, like in vertical marriage, getting that relationship, our relationship with Christ first, it's naturally going to spill out to our husbands and our families around us. That's one of the spiritual significance facts, is just when this is going good, this is going to be going good too. So just that overflow of joy. Then, but of course, as in all good things, Satan, the thief, wants to get and try and rob us of our joy. And I think this is on your handout as well. Yeah. There are 4 areas that he really works hard in. And as I was reading through these, I was remembering times in my life when, I let him, that joy was taken away. The mind of Christ, we really have to have that attitude of Christ every day. Circumstances, we're always happy, and when things are easy and going our way, that we're joyful, we're happy. Happy is, a little different than joy, but we can only control a few of the circumstances that come into our lives. And so we shouldn't look at circumstances just in themselves, but in our relationship to Jesus. And then people. All of us have lost our joy because of people. For me, and probably for most of us, it's the people that I love the most. My husband, my kids, my grandkids now. That, you know, I'm not always my best person around the people that I love the most. Certainly, we've made others unhappy as well. We shouldn't expect others to serve us, but our desire should always be continually to serve them. And then things we know things don't last and they don't fully satisfy, but we need to look at them in the light of eternity. I know when we're kind of past, you know, we're decades ahead of you, but when we were in that accumulating, building a home, making our house a home, one of my favorite things is this big Amish gathering table that we have. And I felt one of my things always was, one of my code words, which will probably be on my gravestone, is simplify. I just love simplifying lives. And I always would say, okay, it's only going to burn. Things are just going to burn. What difference is that going to make in eternity for me? But I felt really good about this big dining room table. And it has been really one of the core places of our ministry because we have a lot of people over. We minister around that table. We meet with couples. And so you just need to look at things of this world from heaven's point of view. It's okay to have things, but they can steal our joy. But the worst of all is worry. And worry kind of goes with all of those things because it's an inside job. It's inside of us. And I'm going to go to that next slide. I'm just going to read this first part. From the spiritual point of view, worry is wrong thinking, it's our mind, and wrong feeling, our heart, about circumstances, people, and things. Worry is the greatest thief of joy. Your turn.
Okay. Isn't this good advice? But if you're like me, it sounds great on paper, but I'm a good worrier. Anybody else a good worrier? I carry it around with me all day long. I can sleep with worry. And it's really true. And as many areas that you want to grow and improve in, you can't just hit an off switch, can you? Say, oh, great, I'll stop being that way, and you can just change. It's really about progress. It's about progress over perfection and growing. And it's a slow, steady thing, and you find ways that help you do that practice. So I'm going to share with you a practice that I found that helps with my worry. So you worriers, here's a few practical things. I can't remember if I have a slide on this one.
I don't think so.
One of the things that I found, because worry is a joy stealer, and when we've had a couple of things, as any families, you know, life is messy. And when we run into things that are very stressful, I carry it around a lot, and it is a joy stealer. I worry about it. I worry about my family or whatever's involved, and rightly so. It is something to worry about. But it consumes the other parts that are important. So what I learned is how to make an appointment with my worry. And this has been very helpful. And often my appointment time, I would think about my day and when is a good time for me to really sit down and give this worry some attention. And for me, a lot of time it was 4 o'clock. After I got back from work, I could take 15, 30 minutes to really sit down and maybe pray about it, journal about it, reflect about it, maybe take a walk, and really pay attention to this important issue, come up with some plans, and move on.
Leave it.
And so here's the ticket, is when I found myself starting to worry other parts of the day, I would simply say, it's not 4 o'clock yet. And I could park it and wait, and I could give it the attention it needed, and it really lifted the load because the rest of you need that. Am I next?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the next slide is another one. So we have joy as the elephant in the room. It can be a joy stealer. I'm going to say this one, the message is, in hard times, joy feels more like a rock. And how the Lord is your strength during difficult times. And so when I faced difficult times, in fact, some of this I learned when I was dealing with one of our trickier issues in this time of prayer. And I realized there is gratefulness and help to know that I'm not alone. and that God sees everything about me. The other thing that you get to realize that his hands are big enough. They'll carry you through anything you're facing, anything. The third is progress over perfection. We can be our worst enemies. Find the little stepping stones of what does your next step look like? What can I practice to move in the right direction? And fourth is it's okay to grieve your disappointments and your unfillable expectations. You have to grieve them. And then allow God to fill in something new, a new vision, what it's really going to look like.
Mm-hmm. But the joy of the Lord is our strength. That's a good one. The last little clip we want to show you is Kay Warren. She has a whole study on joy. And this is her, after years and years of thinking about what the difference is between happiness and joy, that this is her definition. So after we watch this clip, you're going to be journaling again in this area. Joy is the settled assurance that God is in control of all the details of my life, the quiet confidence that everything will be all right, and the determined choice to praise God in every situation. And we found that marriage really is a great testing ground for so many things. So many things in life are changing, and so many things are out of our control. We've been through cancer. We've been through teenage children that have been hard, some adult situations. And happiness is fleeting, but joy is everlasting. And when Jesus says, be of good cheer, I've overcome the world, when he's talking about good cheer, he's talking about joy. So anyway, we'll watch this little clip, and then you'll journal a little bit afterwards. How might this definition help you this week with your attitude?
So here's what I've come up with from studying Scripture. Joy is the settled assurance that God is in control of all the details of my life. The quiet confidence that ultimately everything is going to be all right, and the determined choice to praise God in every situation. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's nothing in that definition about happy feelings, because as we all know, happiness is fleeting and temporary and unstable.
You know, sometimes we think our lives are like hills and valleys with ups and downs, but it's really more like these train tracks. Every day of your life, there are great things that happen. Produce joy, satisfaction. Every day of your life, something bad happens. There's sorrow at the same time. These two tracks run parallel all the way through our lives. So on any given day, when you're in the middle of a great experience and you think, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, there's also this little sense that there's also something in it that's not perfect. And in the middle of some of the most terrible things that ever happened to you, there's also a dim awareness that there's still beauty in this life to be found. And that's the way it's going to be your entire life. These two tracks are inseparable. So we think what we should do is try to stay on the joy side of the tracks and avoid the sorrow side of the tracks to the best of our ability. But the fact is we can't do that. But here's where I want to give you some hope. If you stand on a train tracks and you look all the way down, at some point at the horizon, the train tracks stop being two tracks and they become one. And the brightness of the horizon, the two become one. And that's exactly how it's going to be in our lives someday. The day that you and I meet Jesus Christ face to face, the joy and the sorrow are going to come together in the brightness of his presence, and the sorrow will disappear, and only the joy will remain. Until then, we're going to live with both joy and sorrow.
So here's what...
So we're going to take 1 minute before we finish up here and just journal. How might that definition of joy that she stated right there in your handouts, how could that help your attitude and your mindset this week, this week? How could that definition help you? your attitude and mindset this week. So we just want to close with, this was actually the last statement of the Be Joyful Bible study book that I just thought was a nice summary. Remember that your joy is not meant to be a selfish thing. It is God's way of glorifying Christ and helping others through you. Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. And the result will be joy. So the last thing we want to do is kind of in summation of spending time together with your spouse and doing something, a great spiritual activity. We just always like to tell you when the church is going to be offering marriage classes. Right now we're just finishing up the Love Like You Mean It. We have about 3 weeks left. In January, on January 15th, comes the 5-week vertical marriage class again, which is a great class. Husbands like it because it's Dave Wilson, the former Detroit Lions football chaplain for 30 years. He and his wife do vertical marriage. So that will be 5 weeks starting January 15th.
Your husband just said, that's cool.
Yeah. Love Talk is a communication class. That's going to be in April and May. We don't do Easter and Mother's Day, but that will start on April 16th.
And all the dads said, all right, I'll do that for you.
And then we're going to be doing Love Like You Mean It again. It's such a great 1 Corinthians 13 study, same time next fall. And they're all in Sunday morning, first service. And the kids can go to kids' church. So thank you. I hope that was helpful. Hope you were able to find some spiritual significant pieces there.
Thank you, guys. That was so
sorry
great.
We went a little over there.
No, you're good. This is all. Aren't these two wonderful? They're like funny and they're real. Don't you guys just want to hang out with them? So make sure you look at those classes because if they're leading them, you want to go. Okay. Thank you so much. I was over there taking notes. So we are going to put up a question or the phone number to text in some questions. So this is an anonymous phone number, so we're going to do Q&A in a little bit after discussion time. So these are questions that Tom and Racky are going to come back up and answer. So if there's some questions that you have